Right.
Well, thank you for all the patience with everyone. We'd like to welcome Chawy Frenn, one of my new and favorite people that I've gotten to meet as of lately. I had the honor to see his living space and studio, and out of all the people I know in the DC area, he probably has one of the most amazing collections of art, not to mention art that he also produces. So I was blown away by his collection and his ability to speak about art, number one. And then when we actually visited his studio in person, it was a real intimate and incredible treat to see these pieces in person. So I don't know when the next time you guys will be able to see his work in person, but I imagine it's going to be probably on your to-do list when you see this slideshow. But I just want to say what an incredible person Chawy is, and I'm so grateful that he is now in my life. And I'd like to welcome him to our ACO today. And thank you, Chawy.
Good morning. I want to start by saying thank you to you, Jordan. Thank you for the invite, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my work with a group of artists. One of the things that I always look for is to use my art as a platform to talk about issues, to encourage other artists to really look inside as much as they're looking outside for inspiration. So while we're talking, I wanna say first, I do apologize for the problems that we had to connect the PowerPoint. So I hope you can stay. I will make it very brief, what I want to say, and I will leave plenty of time, hopefully, to your questions. I hope everybody has had a chance to read this first slide. I want to tell everybody, I'll take this opportunity also to tell you that I am a Fulbright scholar. I went to India in 2017, and my proposal's name was Your Art, Your Voice. And actually, I am in the process of applying for a second Fulbright, and I feel as if it has become my mission as a professor and as a practicing artist to really kindle what I call the fire in the belly in my students and in other artist research. So I hope I have this opportunity to invite you to really start looking at the fire in your belly. Next, please. What I want to tell you is that art doesn't come from the cloud. Art comes from a lived experience. I am from Lebanon. I lived in the war for 6 years before coming to the United States. And the war lasted while I'm doing both my bachelor and my master's. And I'm starting with this slide, which I did as a senior at Mass College of Art, where I went to school. And it really is very fundamental to my questioning of appearances in life. Next, please. In this slide, the ultimate solitude, some people see two figures. I see one. I see one who is looking at a little figure at his feet, which has an embryo pose, and it has a pose of a Peruvian mummy. And behind him, you see lights and darkness. You have abysses and you have summits. And truly, I believe that what is inside each one of us. And the ultimate solitude is to find the universe that exists inside of me, the universe of light and darkness, of hate and compassion, of failure, and of aspirations. And the birth and the death that happens in each one of us every day. I don't believe life and death happen once in a lifetime. It's a process that happens daily. Next, please. So this is me when I had hair and mustache, and you really can see that from very early ages, from very young age, I really felt the confrontation with death was a confirmation of life. And this is not a philosophical concept. For me, thinking about death is not something that really makes me depressed. It really invites me to live more fully and more meaningfully. And I try, despite my failures, to get up and say, okay, what did you learn from your failure? Move on and try to really be more light and bring more life to yourself and to the people around you and to your students. Next, please. This is me again when I had hair and mustache. And what I absolutely love about this very large painting is the symbolism, which you will see more and more as I show you more work. The spirit and the flesh are symbolized by the two statues who are petrified, and their effect is manifested in the figure, which is painted with very warm colors. I do believe what is common to all humanity in all times, in all religions, in all races, in all cultures, is that we are made of the same mold. We are made of spirit and flesh, the visible and the invisible. And what really has helped me a lot to understand human nature is not only to study and read philosophy and religion and travel and all that, but also to see about the interaction of life and death and spirit and flesh inside of me. Next, please. The saint and the prostitute is one of the height of really self-knowledge. And I use these two words, the saint and the prostitute, to talk about what we consider sacred and what we consider filthy in each one of us. You know, when you acknowledge inside, when I acknowledge inside of me that I have the seeds of what I consider or society considers the highest and noblest inspirations. And then when you see the lowest desires, and that is what inspired that painting. And it is a mirror image, because when I look at this painting, I ask myself, which is the saint and which is the prostitute? The two are facing each other, the two are mirror image. And from that, there is a third element that comes, which is crucifixion and ascension. And again, it's a lot of introspection through my art. Next, please. Next, please. Another meditation on the dualities that I see inside of me. The title is Weakness is a Source of Life. And you see a double self-portrait. And I want to invite everybody to recognize that in each one of us, there is that broken part symbolized by the doll and the figure in the lower left coming from the brokenness. But if you are only aware of the depression in your life, if you only are aware of the vulnerabilities and the brokenness in your life, you will be so depressed you may commit suicide. What really is creating a balance in my life is the acknowledgement of the other side, symbolized by the angel on the left and the figure that is coming from the top. The two fingers that are touching each other are an homage to Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam, where I not only see the person who is needing life, Adam, inside of me, but I see the divinity inside of me giving me life. If we think we are God, we can self-destruct. And if we are too aware of our weaknesses without our strength, we also can self-destruct. And that is what this painting about. And the angel is crowning that knowledge and that consciousness. Next, please. When I was a student at Mass College of Art, I came from Lebanon. I didn't speak any English and I didn't have any money. So I really was working full-time as a busboy and as a waiter and trying to really make ends meet as I went to school full-time and worked full-time. And during my times at Mass College of Art, I invite all my students every semester to be aware and not to fall asleep in their art history classes, because that is where I found the people and the artists who really inspired me and who use their art as their voice to talk about issues that relate to their times. Next, please. This painting, for my second year of graduate studies, I went to Temple University in Rome. And this painting is a portrait of me, again, when I had hair. And this is the window that really changed my life. I tell my students, when you are in painting 1, painting 2, drawing 1 and drawing 2, learn your language, learn your visual language. Art is a language. And the question becomes, if art is a language, what is it that you want to say? But I do give them myself as an example. I am a role model for my students that if you don't know what you want to paint, don't worry. I didn't even discover what I want my painting to be about until I was a graduate student. And this was a turning point. This window was packed with broken dolls' heads, as you can see. Nobody, they were covered with dust. The eyes were out. And for me, they were a symbol of the brokenness of our humanity. They were a symbol of the war in Lebanon, which in 87, 88 was still going on. And it transcended the war of Lebanon to really become a metaphor for a broken humanity. And I will talk more about that later. Next, please. This is another painting inspired from the same window, and you really can see how elaborate the composition has become. It is like a grid composition. It is two triptychs on top of each other. On the top, you have Venus and Christ, symbols of physical love and spiritual love.
All your son.
Can everybody hear me? Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I heard talk, so I wasn't sure. So these are two triptychs on top of each other. In the upper triptych, the central panel, you have the many poor, broken and thrown on top of each other. And you have the wealthy with plenty of space for their indulgence. Both the rich and the poor are between Venus and Christ, symbols of physical love and spiritual love. And I don't know if you can see, there is a devil here. I don't know if you can see my pointer. I don't think so because I'm not the one leading. Yes, can you see in front of the doll on the top, there is a devil right here on the corner, right in front of the lady with the yellow dress, with the golden dress. Yes, right there is a devil, and he is having his fork toward the rich and the poor. And this is my way of saying, oh, it's not that rich are bad and the poor are good. Evil belongs to both the rich and the poor. And right below the devil, there is a self-portrait with one hand extended toward the devil and one hand extended toward Christ, questioning the nature of good and evil. In the lower triptych, you have Adam and Eve, and you have death behind bar. And for me, it raises the question, how will the triumph over death will be? Will it be by transforming death or by eliminating death? So already you can get an idea how much I use my art to talk about philosophy, religion, questioning life and death, and questioning the meaning of life. Next, please. Some of the artists that I have looked at, one of them is so powerful in my consciousness is Otto Dix. Otto Dix is not only someone who painted about war, he was in the trenches. He was in World War I, and he saw his comrade really torn into pieces. He smelled the bombs, he smelled the decaying bodies. And as you can see in this print, for me, I can smell the war looking at his work. Next, please. So this is another big painting. You know, when people tell me your paintings are scary, your paintings are depressing, your paintings are, how can I live with them? That is not my problem. This is not why I paint. And I genuinely encourage every artist to really look inside and raise the question, if my art is my platform, if my art is my voice, what is it that I want to talk about? And for me, as someone who lived in the war, who grew up Christian, who had a lot of questions about my faith and my belief and my religious, you know, the education that I had from my Catholic faith, I started to question to find what I believe, not what I was given to believe. And this painting, a Latin title, Thus Ends the Word's Glory, you see a composition that expands beyond the picture frame in all four directions. And for me, it makes it a detail of a larger context. And as I have said earlier, paintings are inspired by a life deeply lived, by tears, by prayers, by blood, by hope. And for me, it's not that I want to make paintings about war. I genuinely believe these are the paintings that my life is leading me to create. Despite that, I've heard it for over 30 years now, your work is depressing. I'm sorry, it's not depressing. In my book, it's only holding a mirror to realities that you don't want to see. Next, please. Victims of our games, if you really look at the size, it's 48 by 72 inches, which makes those dolls gigantic. And I'm playing with scale to say how sometimes the very things that we are creating become the games that really we die for and we kill each other for. Religion, nationalism, economy, national interest. All these in my book are games created by people to kill each other. National interest is everywhere. I can go to the other side of the planet to kill people because I have my national interest extend to every corner of the world. Religion has become a tool to really say my religion is better than your religion. I genuinely believe that when people talk about labels, they are trying to make us to see the label and not the human being. They are Muslim, they are gays, they are Latinos, they are Blacks. And for me, that is a language of divide and conquer. Next, please. Next, please.
Something's, hold up. There we go, sorry.
This painting by Evergood really touched me very, very strongly personally. I grew up Catholic, and what I absolutely love about some of my faith aspects is the correlationship between the suffering of Christ and the suffering of humanity. So you see a crucifix with all kinds of wounds and pain, and you also see a relationship to the pain of humanity around him. The soldiers, the forgotten people, the marginalized people. And for me, that is what becomes the divine suffering, which is nothing other than the suffering of humanity. Next, please. This painting is called Civil War. And I must say, as a Catholic and as a Lebanese, it was a very big taboo to paint myself completely naked. And this is one of my first painting where I said, you know what? It's not a big deal. It's only a brushstroke. So I really wanted to make the contrast between the individual and the mass. When we hear about wars, we hear numbers. When we hear about natural disasters, we hear numbers. When we hear about anything that becomes statistic, we are not seeing the individual. And what I wanted to do in this painting is to talk about all the masses that we don't know because they become shells. And I wanted to put myself on top of it because I want the individual to be recognized and to be accounted for. And that is what inspired the composition of this painting. Next, please. The one on the left is a self-portrait. The title is in French, Your Silence Calls Me. And the one on the right, Your Silence I Suffer. So I'm dealing with silence. And in both of these paintings, I really want to invite the viewer to ask that question. Where am I in this painting? On the left, me, the artist, is trying to give a hand to help somebody. But I am aware that sometimes by trying to lend a hand, you take the risk of falling and becoming one of them. And in the one on the right, Your Silence I Suffer, really raise the question to the viewer, who's silence and who's suffering? If we are seeing the silence of the dolls, that is what's making the figure on the bottom right suffering. If we see the silence of the guy in the bottom, then it's the other way around. Or the third option, our silence, the viewer. You know, I think we've all read something about the silence of the good when there is evil taking place. And many, many people like Mahatma Gandhi have said that the silence of the good is more dangerous than the evil doer themselves. Next, please. I tell people who tell me my work is depressing, I tell them I'll give you $10 if you can look at the entire oeuvre of Katie Caldwell and if you can point to one happy painting. Art is not to make anybody happy. I don't care for that. You want to be happy, go to a playground. You want entertainment, go to the theater, go dance. For me, for someone else, art is entertainment, be my guest. For some other people making a beautiful painting, be my guest. For me, art is holding a mirror on its time. Katie Caldwell lost her son in the Second World War. She's German, she lived in the war. Her entire oeuvre from A to Z is about the suffering of humanity and the injustices of humanity. And you know what? I really take courage from a woman like her who really dedicated her voice to talk about issues of death and mortality and violence and war. And I want to really highlight her importance in my life. Next, please. You will see that the nude will play a big element in my work. I absolutely love to paint the nude figure, whether it's male or female, but they are another symbol in my book, like the doll's head, like the skulls. The nude is a symbol. If you really look at these two paintings, it's the same woman in two poses. What I want you to see, the one on the left, homage to Caldwell, which we just spoke about, but I want you to see how she's holding the skull and her eye and the colors that I have chosen in the painting. And with the same two elements, a nude lady holding a skull, the emotion that you get from them is completely different, not only because of the gesture and the eye expression, but also because of the colors that are used. And that is what I talk about to my students, about the relationship between what, how, and why, and how can really change the what. Next, please. We are with the same subject. I'm not the first one to deal with the issue of a beautiful lady and death. And we have here Hans Baldung. You can see the dates in the bottom. It has been a very honored subject matter in the history of art. And again, I want to go back. Please study your art history. Please be aware who are the people who speaks to you and to your sensibility, because I promise you, we all are standing on the shoulder of giants. We are not reinventing the wheel from the beginning. Next, please. Here we are again. Next, please. In 1991, I went to Spain, to the Prado, specifically to see this painting. I fell in love with it when I saw it in a slideshow at Mass College of Art. And this is what I really cannot emphasize enough. I'm not learning about Hieronymus Bosch. I'm learning about Chawy through Chawy's reaction to some work and to life and to art that I went all over. I was very blessed and very lucky that I had many, many art pilgrimages to go and visit paintings that I have studied when I was still at Mass College of Art. So when I went to Spain to see this painting in 1991, I was blown away beyond emotional response. I came back to my studio in Boston. I was living in Boston at the time. And for over 2 months, I couldn't even do a sketch. And one day, my head told me, you just went to Spain to see the Garden of Earthly Delights. Why don't you do your own Garden of Earthly Delights? And I said, nah, people are going to compare me to Bosch. Maybe when I am 60, I will do it. And the head said, his painting was a reflection of his time. Can you make your painting a reflection of your time? And as soon as I thought that, magically, next painting, please, I did the largest painting of my life. It is 6x7, it's 1 second, 4x6, 6x7, 4 and 7 and 4. It's 15 feet wide. It's 15 feet wide by 6 feet high. I kept the same format as Hieronymus Bosch. You have heaven on the left, earthly delights in the middle, and hell on the right. Visually, the red color relates all 3 panels to each other. And you see that there is a narrative. On the left, you have pure love of mother and child. Yes, I am Catholic, or was, or is. I don't know who I am anymore. But the love of mother for her child is for me the purest love. And the baby child, Jesus, is pointing to his crucifixion. Because of his love for humanity, he was crucified. And in the middle, you see humanity as masks. They are wearing masks. And you can see some phallic shapes, which also relate to Bosch's painting, because his earthly delights are of sexual nature. So I was very happy to see the phallic form in some of the masks. And in the right, you see the figure looking at the mask and leading them to hell, where you have the only mask that is laughing. What I want to tell you, the reason why I was able to do this, because I was going through my personal crisis with my faith. What you see common in all these three paintings is that all of them are man-made, all of them are hollow, and all of them are fragile. So what I'm saying is that our spiritual ideals and spiritual ideas, our pleasures and our delights are all hollow, man-made, and empty. Very realistic approach to it. The only paintings that you will see that I did where you can see it closed and open. This is how you see it closed, and it deals with this dichotomy of earthly pleasure and beauty and aesthetics and spiritual. And that picture in the lower left-hand corner is a self-portrait. One of the saints is holding a self-portrait, a portrait of me in his hand. And next slide, you will see the top with the skull and the baby's head belonging to both the triptych open and closed. On the left, you have the two major elements that I'm still dealing with, which is symbols of spirit and flesh. I cannot tell you how many people were offended by this, where I have Pan, who is one of the gods from Greek time, is coming from underneath the cloak of Jesus. And this is a statue of baby Jesus of Prague. For me, I'm not insulting, and I'm not interested in insulting. I'm interested in going to the depth of my split, which I have really lived a duality that was sometimes very tearing me apart. And you really see in the middle how the two elements are really symbolized with small death and big birth and vice versa. And in the third panel, which is for me, the relationship between art and life, incredibly informative. The absence of spirit and flesh and the presence of humanity, where the figure, the statue of the figure is bent on the suffering of humanity and its own suffering. And that is the metamorphosis that happened, where I took the extreme of going to the right, light and darkness, spirit and flesh, and both of them dissipated to create the human in me and in everyone else. Next. The dialogue, you also see, is the same concept, and you see the infant of Prague and Pan, and you see a lot of symbolism. If you really put an axis in the center of this, it's 8 feet wide, by the way. And you really can see like a mirror image in the middle. You can see that child with the hand of destiny behind him. I see that. I see many, many of my paintings when I'm doing even still life. I see them as very autobiographical. I can talk a lot about this, but I don't want to spend more time, more than the 15 minutes that we lost at the beginning. Next, please. Another 4 feet by 8 feet painting is called The Wall. And in this painting, I want to talk about the walls that we all, I don't know any of you. I don't know people who existed before me or after me, but we all build walls. And sometimes we build walls to protect ourselves. And sometimes we build walls to protect others and to protect people we love. And in this painting, we have two double self-portraits. That baby in the middle, in the top, is a self-portrait when I was a baby. And the figure on the far right is a self-portrait contemplating and meditating and reflecting on the walls that I have built around me from childhood until the present moment. Next, please. Guernica is considered as the ultimate painting about war. Again, when I was in Spain in 1991, I went to what's the name of that museum? It slipped my mind. It will come to me. It is the only painting behind bulletproof glass. And I tell my student, without a shadow of doubt, when somebody asks me what is the most famous monochromatic painting, say Guernica. And it really is a painting that I look at consistently to really understand it, not only compositionally, but the power of its emotive impact on me. Next, please. So when people tell me your work is depressing, I have many, many giants that I can stand on their shoulder and say, I don't think you would call their paintings and their work depressing, because painting is a mirror of our times. This painting, the title came from a visit to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. Many years ago, more than 25 years ago. I was struck by like wall-size quotes from the masters of the war. And one of these quotes was a quote by Hitler, who after all speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians. When I read this quote, before I read that Hitler is the one who said it, I felt it is one of the most compassionate quotes I've ever read. It's like, why are we not talking about the annihilation of the Armenian? Why are we not talking about the Armenian Holocaust? And then when you read that Hitler is the one who said it, you say, my God, the human mind is such an evil mind, because you can take a statement like this and you can use it to create another Holocaust, thinking that nobody will be talking about it 10 years from now or 40 years from now. And again, we have a composition that goes endlessly in all four directions, which is saying that this is a detail of a much, much larger context. Next, please. I want to say something about the format. As you look, many of these pieces are not on a rectangular format or a square format. When I lost my Catholic faith, I started to look at faith and my belief in my everyday life. I started to look at my faith and my spiritual beliefs in the interaction of my own light and darkness that informed me about the light and darkness that is around me. So when I was a teacher at Cambridge Adult Education Center in Boston, I put these pictures side by side like this, and I allowed people to say, what do you see in this painting? And I can genuinely tell you 50% of the students saw these two paintings as pro-American, and 50% saw them as anti-American. And this is the power of art. You bring to it what you think. You bring to it your own affinities, your own sensibilities, and your own convictions. I'm not saying one way or another. I'm putting very challenging titles to make people think, to go deeper, and not to stand in front of surfaces, to dig in and to really understand how much people in power are the same everywhere, everywhere and in all ages. I promise you, this is one of my deepest fundamental beliefs, that it's not a war between black and white, between gay and straight, between Muslim and Christian, between this and that. It has been all along the history of humankind, a war between the elite, the people in power, who make their best to keep the people poor so they can dominate them and so they can manipulate them. And that is what these two paintings are about. Next, please. The Holocaust is obviously a play on the Holocaust. And I genuinely asked myself, as a human being in this little speck of time that I have on this earth, what are we learning from history? What are we learning from everything we've gone through? What are we learning from the justification of wars? Nobody makes a war because they say, I want to invade another country and I want to take their resources. We are invading other countries because we want to bring them democracy, because we want to get rid of their tyranny, because we ennoble our reasons why we go to war, and we go to the other side of the world, we enslave, we dominate, we kill, we get rid of regimes that are not doing what we want them to do, and we do the same thing again and again and again. And what I'm trying to say is, this is no longer about war. This is about the Holocaust of all the people who are the victims of corporations' greed and of unbridled domination that is accountable to nobody. Next, please. Again, I'm not the first one who talks about these things. A very, very iconic painting from Goya. It talks how, you know, these people who are defending themselves against the French occupiers, you know, they are called terrorists and they are being shot. And this is what I spoke about earlier, how labels prevent us from seeing who is putting the label and what. France went all the way to Mexico, and the Mexicans are trying to defend themselves from the invaders. They are called terrorists, and we feel very justified in killing them. This is happening in our time, right here, right now, not in 1984 or 1814 or any of these past dates. This is happening now. You want to kill somebody without feeling any guilt or shame, and everybody will be behind you, call them one single word, terrorist. But remember, people who are defending their land and their resources are freedom fighters. And we've heard that language. I remember hearing it since Reagan time. What they are, they become for us terrorists because how dare they oppose us. Next, please. I absolutely love this Picasso intake on the previous painting. And you really can see, I absolutely love it. It's no longer in Mexico, it's in Korea. And I love that. This inspired me. Chawy, don't be afraid. Next. Clash of civilizations. Do you remember how much that buzzword was in the media? Oh, they are so retarded. They don't like our democracy. George Bush, when he invaded Iraq, they hate us because we have democratic system. No, they don't hate you because you have democratic system. They hate you because you invaded their land and you want to take their resources, and you're using every excuse to justify that. And I have many, I'm blessed. I'm very blessed. I have amazing people, friends that are of every religion. When I went to India in 2017, I learned about religions that I never knew existed, like Jainism. I've heard of Sikh, but I don't know any friend who is Sikh. I have amazing friends who are Sikh religion. When you meet the person, like during 9/11, people ask me, I teach at George Mason, and during 9/11, when people know that I'm Lebanese, they would ask me, are you Muslim? I would tell them always the same answer. If I tell you I am Muslim, are you going to know if I am a good Muslim or bad Muslim? If I tell you I am Christian, are you going to know if I am good Christian or bad Christian? My religion will inform you nothing about humanity. So I refuse to answer that question. And this is what this painting is about. Next, please. Sacred and profane love. Again, in many of my paintings, I am aware that I want to engage the viewer. And the question to you guys is, which is the sacred and which is the profane? For so many people, the profane is like, oh, it's a shame. Why is he nude? Of course he is sacred because we covered him with the flag. And what I want to challenge everybody is to say, what if the one that is covered is covering the aggression, is covering the lies with which we sent thousands and thousands of Americans to their death? Why? I have students at George Mason. I specifically think of one who went to Pakistan and to Iraq. When she came back, she wanted to study art to really speak about the treasons that she felt when she learned that she wasn't sent there to bring democracy. And this is what this painting is about, to really make people think outside of the box, outside of what the media is brainwashing them to think. Next, please. Requiem. I did this one before the invasion of Iraq, and the shape of the board, because all these are painted on panel, the shape of the panel inspired the nuclear bomb in the background. Maybe we are heading there in this lifetime with all the tension that is happening, and we're sending, all military equipment to Taiwan, and we're sending military equipment to it's unbelievable what we are witnessing. And if you are not seeing that, I don't know why. Next, please. Hope and Judgment. What does this inspire you? Why is this titled Hope and Judgment? Why is there in this case, I hope you can see that it is a pregnant woman who is under the flag. It's not like the previous one, someone that you know is a male, because this one, I wanted to see that she is pregnant. And what is that child on top of it? She is underground and he is above ground. And I genuinely cannot invite you enough not to be afraid, not to ask, oh, what does Chawy mean? Why did he do that? But to ask yourself what it means to me. Because when you ask that, the painting becomes alive to you, like a person who is in front of you who's having a conversation with you. Next, please. Caution, religion. You know, I come from the Middle East. I know the power of religion in the Middle East. I know the ideology of religion. I mean, people have different things that they die for. Some people die to make more money. Some people die to defend their faith. Some people die to bring more resources. Some people die to defend their land. Be very, very careful, because these are the fuel that really make wars blow everywhere. I am so aware of what's boiling now in the Middle East, what's boiling now in Africa, what's boiling now in Ukraine and Russia, what's boiling. And I ask myself, are we really smart as we think we are? Or are we stupid, repeating the same thing again and again until the end of times? Next, please. I put these two paintings side by side because I want to show you the relationship between the what and the how. We have a slaughtered ox by Rembrandt next to a slide of beef by Chaim Soutine. And what I want you to see is the incredible transformation of that carcass under the color and the brushstroke of the artist. Next, please. Another one with the carcass behind a Pope by Francis Bacon. And I want to tell you that I was aware of these paintings after I painted mine. Next, please. When I visit Lebanon, when I visit a foreign country, wherever I go, my big tool of research is my camera. I take pictures everywhere. During my Fulbright in India, I took thousands, literally thousands of pictures that I didn't know what to do with, but I knew that they will be part of my research. And these two pictures come from a butcher shop in Lebanon. It's a carcass hanging by its hind leg. It is skinned, it is gutted, and it is their intestines spilling out. What I absolutely love is not the carcass itself, but what the carcass allowed me to talk about. On the left side, That You May Live brings into focus that, yes, whether I like it or not, some things have to die in order for some things to live. You know, a deer dies so the lion can live. You know, that goat died so I can eat it and live. And the other one, which I absolutely love, is the hypocrisy and the stupidity of killing each other in the name of religion. I have a very dear Jewish friend. I described that painting to him. He did not see it. I described it as such. The carcass is skinned and gutted, and the bloody hand of the butcher is turning it toward the viewer and asking him, is this kosher or halal? And my Jewish friend exploded in laughter. He got it. And I'm not going to say any more about it. Next, please. The Kiss, or East Meets West. Like I did with the painting with the double self-portrait, the saint and the prostitute, this is the same idea, the mirror image. East meets West. Which is East, which is West? Don't we see how much we mirror each other? We both want power, we want superiority, we want to take control of resources, we want to be the dominant forces in the world, and this is what's creating the clash, the kiss. And look at the sea of blood that is remnant or the result of the mirror image. Next, please. Don't panic. They called us terrorists. I spoke very briefly about that. You want to kill somebody righteously? Call them terrorists. Everybody will be grateful to you that you got rid of terrorists. But don't stop at the label. You know, they are only sheep, and we're killing sheep in order to keep our power. And I am so sad sometimes. I really slide into deep depression, realizing what we are doing to each other, and realizing that this world can be truly a paradise if we really recognize ourselves in the other person. Next. I spoke of autodix earlier. This summer, I almost went to Germany to see this painting. This has been on my bucket list for basically since Mass College of Art in 1982-83. So 40 years later, I haven't had a chance to go see it. It is a polyptych, and I absolutely want to remind you, for me and for my sensibility as a human being, not just as an artist, I look at this painting and I can smell the trenches. I can see the decapitated body. I do not see pain. I see the trenches and the smell of death. And this arched skeleton on the top in the middle pointing to the destruction in the horizon and in the background. Mwah! And look at the right panel, and you really can see that apocalyptic landscape. You know, look at the figures. They become so washed out by nuclear or by, it's very, very powerful triptych, and I cannot wait to go and see it. Next, please. Other two painters, we spoke about Katie Colwitz before. Siqueiros is a Mexican artist, and this painting with a child and the echo of the scream. We're very lucky to have this painting here at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And you stand in front of that painting. You stand in front of that painting and you hear the scream of that child in the destitution that is around him. Next, please. Please remember that painting because you're gonna see a lot of children paintings. Now we move into another very powerful series that I have used, Symbolism of Shoes. Very briefly, the shoes didn't come from thinking about the shoes that I saw in the Holocaust Museum. I was in London. I spent the entire day at the National Gallery. When I left, there was like a 12 feet high mound of shoes, and they were in the center of the square. I went down to ask why do they have shoes. It was a demonstration against landmine. And the woman that I talked to was giving statistics about how many people, many, many years after war, if they don't die, they lose their legs because they step on landmine. And while I was talking to her, a voice in my head said, take pictures. Can't you see a painting there? And it took me, I think, a couple of years before I started to do my series on the shoes. And Golgotha is the name of the place where Christ was crucified. And the reason why I called it Golgotha is because of what I said earlier, that divine suffering is nothing but human suffering. Next, please. Peccata mundi, meaning sins of the world. If you really look at the yellow strip, mine, international handicap. And I absolutely cannot tell you how powerful that symbolism for me. Mine was what I wanted to write, not to refer to the landmine, but to refer to the ownership of the sufferings that we are inflicting on each other, whether it's personally or whether it's nation inflicting suffering on other nation. And sometimes when I see like what happened during the Rwandan suicide, no one did anything to stop it. And that's why I wrote the word international handicap. It's like, oh my God, when I read about that and the justification of France and the United States and the Western countries, why they didn't interfere early enough to stop it is beyond. And I invite you to research that, to see really the international handicap that happened and how mine doesn't exist because everybody is blaming it on someone else. Next, please. I do apologize. I said there's only one where you can see it closed or open. This is the second one that you can see closed and open. When it is closed, it's 4 feet by 8 feet. And look at the arts, ladies and gentlemen, all of you who are artists there. Look at the arts, dance in one side, painting on the top, sculpture in the bottom, music in the bottom. So on the left side, you have music in the bottom left, dance, painting. You have here theater, and you have here drama. So that is what you see, how the arts can open the world to reality with their metaphors and symbolism. Open it, please. Next one. This is what you see when the triptych is open. Everything is painted. Everything is trompe-l'oeil. And you see in this painting like a synthesis of all my symbolism. The shoes, the dolls, the skulls, the religious iconography. And I thought I was gonna do a new big series with the urn, and the urn being a symbol of humanity, of what are we filling our lives with. And you see in the bottom, left and bottom right, sculptures that I took from my visit to France to Père Lachaise, to the cemetery of Père Lachaise. And you really can see humanity going to the inevitable death. And for me, Missa Pro Pace is Mass for peace. I want every fiber of my body, I want every painting that I do to raise the question of peace, addressing every power that I am given before I die, to really tell you I am against violence in all its shapes and forms. And I don't care if you think my work is depressing. If you think it's depressing because you cannot hang this painting in your house, I think it's depressing to live in a world where we are bombarded by violence and we ignore it because we feel there is nothing we can do about it, instead making the change that we need to make in our community and in our personal dealings. Next, please. I told you that Siqueiros painting, I absolutely love to use children in my paintings. Miserere nobis means have mercy on us. And you really can see a child in a landscape of death and violence and mortality. Next, please. Unwarranted influence. Look at this. A child carrying his sister on his shoulder, turning his back to the violence and the destruction that is behind him. And look at what's happening on the right panel. This is a sculpture of a military power on top of a tomb in one of the churches. And I absolutely love how casually that figure is looking at the landscape of death, as if it has nothing to do with it, as if it is not the reason why that death and that violence and that destruction is happening. And that is what I call people who are with white gloves. They create violence inside a country while they are watching from the outside and giving money and arms to both sides so they can kill each other. And why get involved when I can get somebody to do the dirty work? I absolutely see it everywhere. Next, please. Invisible children, very similar idea of the children who die, and you can see the mass of the destruction in the background on the left, and the hope of that child looking toward a future that is brighter and that has more peace and more prosperity in it. And the contrast between the two figures for me is very, very reminding of all the children that we sent to war. I've read so much. Actually, I have to admit, it's my students at George Mason University who spoke about invisible children to me, and all the children in Africa and in Asia, where at a very young age, they indoctrinate them and they send them in the fields before the soldiers come. So if there are mines, it's the children who die and clear the ground for the soldier to come after them. Next, please. Nothing personal, just economic interest. as you have people who trade with animals, with industrial agriculture, with industrial beef market, there are also other people who deal with destroying other countries so they can protect their interests. And what I absolutely want to tell you, that titles are very important to my paintings. I don't want anybody to come and call it a woman carrying her brother or a girl carrying her brother looking at the destruction of her city. No, this is about what is happening that we refuse to see. Next, please. Where shall wisdom be found? You really can see humanity, consoling humanity, meaning the I recognizing itself in the other, and the capital O, because, and you can see the sign of peace on his short. You can see that one of them is without shoes in a landscape of shoes. It is about consumerism, it is about war, it is about violence, and the two figures in the middle is the I and the other. Next, please. I personally was very enraged when I learned about Citizens United. And Citizens United is a Supreme Court decision that said money is free speech and corporations are people. And you have a child, very low-key panel on the right, looking at a very high-key panel on the left, because here we are, the untouchables in their elite, in their laws that they put to really protect themselves and to make illegal things legal. I have a Mexican friend who told me, you know what the difference in Mexico and the United States? I said, what? She said, in Mexico, they know it's corrupt and they do it anyway because nobody can touch them. I said, this is how it is in Lebanon. And she said, what's happening in the United States? And she said, in the United States, they know it's corrupt, they pass laws, they make it legal, and they do it. And that is what Citizens United, in my opinion, about, because they flood the election process with billions of dollars to affect the election. And for me, this is not democracy anymore. Next, please. You will see now series, a war series by Henry Moore, a war, The Disasters of War by Goya. And next, please. And the series of war from Otto that we have talked about before. These three series, I have books with these three series, three different books, and subconsciously, I was not aware when I began my series about these three. Is in my 10 years of research. Next, please. For 10 years, I have done 107 paintings on the Constitution of the United States. If you really look at them, you always see we the people on the upper left hand. I went to the National Archives in Washington, D.C. I bought posters, prints of the Constitution, and I used that as the ground, and I painted on top of them. For 10 years, I wasn't aware of the United States history. I did not grow in the United States and learned about what's happening to the African American, what happened to the Native American, what happened to mass incarceration, what happened in the way we have the balance between the three powers of the executive and the Congress and the Supreme Court. I learned that by looking through the rabbit hole to do these paintings. And I am so appalled how much there is a big gap between our ideal and our reality. Next, please. I have, I think, 3 slides. Each one has 2 of them. And you really can see what has started as my voice against Citizens United and against the influence of money on politics. It has become, next please, talking about human rights, about the power of Wall Street, about the power of lobbying, influencing the legislature, and they give them the language to say, oh, we're doing this for the people. One of the most misused language in American politics, the American people, we the people. you hear people and legislators say, oh, the American people want this, the American people want that. They don't say the corporations have paid me to do this and the corporations have paid me to say that. Next, please. And what was about 50 paintings are about the influence of money and politics, and about 50 paintings are about human rights. Here we have the Native Americans and the African Americans. Next, please. And I'm almost toward the end, so maybe 4 or 5 more minutes maximum. I'm sorry if I'm taking longer. I want to tell everybody, I promise you, if I was a pessimistic guy, I would stop painting. If I gave up hope, I would have stopped painting. When I stopped painting, say Chawy gave up hope. As long as I have the brush in my hand, as long as I can paint about these issues, I have my voice. I don't look at them and say, oh my God, I have to look the other way because there is nothing I can do about it. I can paint, and I cannot be grateful enough for the people who gave me that platform to share my work with other artists and to inspire you to use your art as your voice. What you see in this painting, which I call the triumph of life, is the new life, the new bloom, and the new incredible transformation of war and violence into beauty and peace and new beginning. Next, please. And this painting is also the same. This is what my motto is. My motto is art for life's sake. I don't paint, I hate art for art's sake. Nothing in this world exists for its own sake. Nothing. You exist for something. Yes, you take care of yourself, you give yourself your need, and then what? To do what? If you can talk, what do you want to talk about? This is what I want you to know. What is it that you want to say? And in this painting, you see 2 elements that we've seen before, which is the angel and the woman. I have used the same symbols in a previous painting that I called Between Spirit and Flesh. In this one, you have all the dichotomy here. Spirit and flesh is here. Light and shadow is in the background. And in the center, you see the transformation of the decaying leaves that become manure to give life to a new sprout. That is why it is like an altar piece. That is my new faith, and this is my new spirituality, and this is what is sacred to me, the language between my own light and darkness. You deal with your darkness. I'm not in a position to judge your darkness. If I can shine a little bit of light on it, then I did my share as a human being, not as an artist only. Next, please. I'm sharing with you some of my last new paintings that are not even on my website yet. Look at how much more engaged with war and violence. My heart bleeds when we go bomb countries all over the globe because of national interest. My students who are international relation and this and that, they are the one, I swear to you, I don't know American history. They told me from their studies at George Mason how much they have learned about how corporations, global corporations supported by Western countries, they go to Central America and to South America, and they attack the native people and they take their land. They are the property of humanity. No, they're not the property of humanity. They are the they become the property of corporations who take billions of dollars by bribing people in power in these countries. And when they try to come to our country, we tell them, no, you cannot come here. No, you cannot come here. And we don't admit that it's our bombs that made them refugees. Next, please. We have learned nothing. This is a child that I told you when I was a Fulbright scholar in India. I took pictures everywhere, not knowing how I will use them. That child is from India. And I put him in the context. Instead of being in the street, in a dirty street, he is in an endless landscape of shoes. And look at the symbolism. Look at the faces inside the shoes. And the title is We Have Learned Nothing, which means it's an homage and a tribute to a quote by Desmond Tutu, who said, and it is inscribed in the painting, the only lesson we learn from history is we don't learn from history. Next, please. These two paintings were created after all the upheaval about what we have witnessed 2 years ago with George Floyd. One of them is called Dream Deferred, and the other one is called America, I Cannot Breathe. And these two paintings are very, very, very different from everything I've done before. I've never used drips in my work. I never used this technique in my work. And both of them, each one of them was done in a period of 6 hours. Next, please. Please read what's underneath this. We are looking at structure of the brain 2 millimeters across. Next, please. And this one, you're looking at 1 billion light year across a structure of the universe. And then I ask myself, who are we between these two infinities, the infinitely small and the infinitely large? Why can't we be aware that we are really a very short presence, and why don't we use our energy to really recognize ourselves in each other? Next, please. Please take a second to read this. Next, please. This is not the end of my talk. This may be the beginning of a new relationship. What I want you to know is that I've been helped tremendously. When I came from Lebanon at the age of 19, I didn't have $1 in my pocket. I did not speak English because Arabic is my first language and French is my second language. Maybe Lebanese is my first language, not Arabic. Arabic is my second language and French is my third language. And when I came here, I cannot even fathom the help that I have received from people around me who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And I do truly believe that life is given forward. It's not given backward. It's not given back. It's given forward. And that is why I'm telling you, if you want, you have ways of reaching me. And my promise to you in front of everybody, if there is anything I can help with, I'll be very happy to do so. Thank you for listening. Again, thank you for the delay in starting. And I don't know if we have time. I hope we have a few minutes to answer any question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chawy. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
If anyone has any questions, you can either just unmute yourself and or just raise your hand on the little, you can raise your hand on the Zoom, and we can answer some questions before we end.
I cannot see anything. I only see the screen here. I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Yes. Hi. This is Joe. I have a question.
Okay.
What is the evolution of your work? What is next in the world of Chawy and social justice paintings?
I barely know how to make the paintings that I'm working on now. I've been watching my energy in creating. I cannot tell you, Joe, how much I go through blockages. And the blockages stem from your question, because I ask my question to myself every time I start a new painting. And you know me, Joe is a very dear friend of mine, and he's one of my brothers, actually. What you know, Joe, which I will say publicly now, is that the act of creation is, for me, unfortunately, even though I say stay in front of the painting and you will know what to do, sometimes days and weeks and months go by and I don't know what to start because I cannot answer that question that you asked me. Yes, I have, and I am aware that the motif is the same, but I know that how I'm treating my subject is changing. I think it's becoming more urgent in a way, not to what do you say? Don't hit around the bush. It's like, I don't want to hit around the bush. I don't have time anymore. I really want to say what I want to say, and I want to say it in a forceful way, because I am almost giving up on trying to change anything. And you know what, Joe, it's very hard to know that the only one that you can change is yourself. And I can honestly tell you, my art has changed me as much as I am changing my art. What will come next will be something to be seen soon, because I cannot answer that question. Any other questions?
Any others?
Anyone, other questions?
Very impressed. There are lots of chat input about how much they love the presentation.
Oh, thank you.
This is Mariana. It was absolutely wonderful. It gave me so much to think about, including for my art. You are inspirational. I would love to continue talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I cannot thank you enough for giving me this platform, not only to share my art with other artists and people who love the art, but I really hope, which is my deepest desire, is that I have inspired somebody to dig deeper into the meaning, the purpose, and the intent of their own art.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, Chawy, I don't have a question, but so for those who don't know, Chawy was my professor. I had him for a couple of classes at George Mason, and I was just thinking about your art just yesterday, because I was helping a junior in high school coming up with their composition, and they were talking about all of these themes, talking about religion, talking about like how to combine these compelling and conflicting themes. And I gave him your name for your website to check you out as well.
Thank you.
And just like, I can't emphasize enough like how much Chawy like helped develop my work and my peers at George Mason. So thank you. And thank you for sharing this opportunity. I just happened to see him post about it.
What I want to say in response to this is, you have no idea how much I learned from my students. And this particular person, I remember more than once in the classroom in front of all her colleagues and peers, I told her, I bow to you. I bow to you, because she is so powerful in her humanity that I cannot even begin to tell you how much I, who taught her maybe some techniques and some ideas about paintings, but how much I am more empowered by what she has gone through in her life. And it's not my business to say what is that, but I will keep it for her, and to say it publicly in a different forum that it's been such an amazing honor to work with you and to have had the chance to have been called your teacher and to contribute to your development, not only as an artist, but as a human being.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and I hope that everyone has an incredible Labor Day. Thank you again, Chawy, for your amazing presentation. I look forward to your studio visit when we can finally coordinate.
Thank you so much again for this opportunity. One last time, I apologize for the delay, and I know that I kept you much longer than the 11 o'clock. So I hope this was worth your time, and I hope somebody, if you want to, you're welcome to stay in touch. And if there is anything I can help with, I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you so much. It was worth every second.
Thank you so much. You're very kind. Thank you.
Thank you again, everyone. Have a great Labor Day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Is it possible to have a copy